Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Trumos, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Daf Dalid. We're starting today mamish on top of the daf. We learned in the Mishnah that Chamisha lo yitremu, Kalev, going back for you, that there are 5 people that are halachically not able to separate the Truma separation. And not only is that pre-facto, but the Mishnah says, V'im tarmu ein trumas on truma, even post-facto, even if they did it, what they did is of no halachic significance. And the 5 was the chedesh, and we spent a lot of time speaking about the deaf mute. We're going to start today speaking about the shoita, someone who's deranged, and we already mentioned the story yesterday, and that's a big question. How do you define halachically someone who's deranged? The third was the cotton. The 4th category is hatoidem es she'enoi shaloi. We're going to also touch upon this one today. If someone separates truma not for himself, but I go into your granary and I take your stuff and I do the separation for you. Now, if you appoint me to do it for you, of course, what I do is valid. But if you don't appoint me to do it for you, then what I did is ineffective. Why? Logically, because don't forget, let's say you have 100 apples. Truma will be rabbinically average 2%. What's 2% from 100 apples? 2 apples. What happens to the 2 apples? You cannot eat it. You have to give it to a kohen. When I do something that's only for your betterment, let's say there's a lost article, and I pick it up for you. Who owns it? You. Even if you don't even know I did it for you. Why? Because mizaken zoichen lo adam shaloi befanav. If I do something that's only for your benefit, then of course you're content with it, even though you don't know about it. But over here, when I separate two apples, those 2 apples are no longer yours. Now, the truth is, before you separate the 2 apples, you cannot eat any of the 100. I know that. But nevertheless, it's yours, but you can't eat it. When I separate the truma, now that's bachlal not yours. That's the kohen's. You can't say that it's purely to your betterment. Okay? So if you don't know what I'm doing for you by truma, it's ineffective. And the 5th category is a non-Jew, even if the non-Jew was appointed by the owner. You told your friend, you told a guy, go, please do me a favor. And he does it, it's ineffective. Because truma can only be separated by a Jew. These are the 5. And we're going to start today to define, how do you define someone who's deranged? What determines that? If you remember in Git and Daf, Perek, the 7th chapter, Perek Shvi, remember we had like 3 Daf. I think that was the longest place in Talmud Bavli where we speak about Talmudic medicines. Some of them are like mystical. It all began with the Mishnah speaking about someone who was seized by kurdiyakos. Kurdiyakos is a certain illness that we'll speak a little bit about today. And part of the kurdiyakos illness is, I think we all have that, is that sometimes we're good, sometimes we're stable, and sometimes we're deranged. And
Bipolar.
Well, I don't. No, not bipolar. We'll see. Mamish clear. It's deranged, unstable. Not unstable bipolar, another type of unstable. And now when a person is in the place of instability, mental instability, they cannot separate truma. When that person is the place of mental stability, same person, then their truma is effective. Now listen to my question. What happens if Reuven has this craziness? We all have. Sometimes we're normal, sometimes we're insane. Insane. When you are sane, when Reuven is sane, he appoints a shliach to separate truma. The shliach is sane. Now, the owner, the one who appointed, goes now into his mode of insane. When the owner is insane, but the shliach is normal, can the shliach then separate truma? He was asked by the owner, the one who's doing it is fine, or do we say, no, he's doing it on behalf of Reuven? If Reuven now cannot do it himself because he's insane, then no one can do it on his behalf. He asked it while he was sane. And now he's not sane. So really, when we have this machlokes in the Bavli, It appears that this is a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. I'm not even going to say what that is, because we're going to say it when we learn it. And what we're going to have today in the Yerushalmi is a different understanding of their machlokes. Gavaldik. So we're going to speak about the Shoita. Today's the day of the Shoita. And then we'll open up the third in the Mishnah, the third category, which is the minor. Even though in the Mishnah there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, there's a lot to be said about a minor. Let's leave it at that. And now let's dive right inside, Daf Dalit on top of the page. So the second of the 5 categories listed in the Mishnah of people, of groups that cannot separate Truma, and even if they did it, it's ineffective, is the Shoita. Now, a Shoita is Amishugana, deranged, insane, crazy, okay? Unstable, mentally unstable. How do you define that? So let's begin. Simone Shoita, I don't know why I'm smiling. I think whenever you learn about a topic and you smile, it means it's you. Okay, say that. It's nicht gefährlich. I own that. Simone Shoita. So listen to this. There are 3. Hayoitze balayla, one who goes out alone at night. Now, guys, whoever's learning right now, you young people, the night today is not the night of Chazal. Today, because of electricity, it's lit up. Whoever went to the country, think about going out at night where there is no flashlight and there's no lights. And I want to add the most important part is you're going out needlessly to a very dangerous area. That's not a sign of a sane person. If a person then went out for a purpose, they're not in this category. But we're speaking about a guy, maybe someone parked over there by the mechanic. Let's not open the door here. Let's open the door over there. We're speaking about someone, again, who goes out needlessly at night. Number 2, Vahalon. So just to know, for the record, that a crazy person is knocking on the door over here. You see that? Let's learn about Mashiach, and Mashiach will come. Category number 2 is Vahalon beveis hakvari, someone who sleeps overnight in a graveyard. Now, sleeping overnight in a graveyard? No, this is fine. No, let's not do that. Sleeping overnight in a graveyard, we're speaking about someone who does so because he's insane. Why am I saying that? Because there were people whoever you guys learn brachas. In Masechta Brachas, we learn about people that go to the cemetery, they sleep at night, and they are imbued either with a demonic spirit, or they all of a sudden begin to communicate to the dead. By the way, this is prohibited, but that's not insane. That's someone who's sleeping in a cemetery because they want to communicate to the dead. That's not what we're talking about. We're speaking about a person, a sane people for no reason would not sleep in a cemetery. And number 3, someone for no apparent reason is tearing his garments. All of these 3 is for no reason. If a person tears their garments for a reason, I'm not saying a good reason. I'll give you an example. Some people, when they get angry, they break things. Now, that is an old idolatrous practice. It's so prohibited. It's mystically so bad, mamish, because it takes anger, which is a very bad energy, and it keeps it in this world because it goes into the broken shards, which is why they did it. It's a very bad practice, but it's done. We have the shaita here. It's done for a purpose, a bad purpose. The Braisa here is speaking about someone who does it for no purpose. Stop, they're crazy, they're deranged. And number 4, now many people understand number 4 as part of number 3, but we'll get into that in a moment. One who destroys that which is given to him. You give something to a person, he destroys it. So the Sanal is saying a good point. Everyone in their insanity has a reason. So when we'll go a little bit further, we'll get more clarity on this.
Why Me'abed is used for destroy and not losing? Unless it's my modern Israeli
I think
Hebrew.
you're making a good point. I would reformulate what Yakir is saying. If someone loses stuff, it doesn't mean they're insane. It just means they're irresponsible. Destroying is a whole different thing. You know, people, absent-minded people, that's not shoita, that's absent-minded. Because the absent-minded, when they focus, they know what they're doing. But if a person destroys for apparently no reason, that's a sign of the guy's deranged. Now, hold on. Now we have a machlekes. Omar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, it's not any one of the above. Because exactly what you just said, Nisanel. Because maybe the guy has a reason. It's if a person does all of the above. V'hu sheyehei kulahen boy. If this, so everything, the guy goes needlessly into dangerous situations, which is going out at night. And this is a guy that also sleeps in the cemetery. And this is a guy, it's all of the things that we mentioned. The law can, because if it's not so, if it's not someone who's doing all of them, I, without even asking, could suggest a reason for all of the above. For example, hayoytze b'layla, why is the guy going out at night? Maybe, I would say, that kinit roichois. What's kinit roichois? So the Mana Fulda gives two options. Either we're speaking about someone who's very anxious, people that are very anxious, they have to move around. Maybe you just say, I can't be here. Let me out of here. Me and Yaker are looking at each other. Or a guy, inami, someone who's overheated. It's too hot. They had no air conditioning. So when you see a guy just picking himself up and running out of his hut, could be he was overheating. It's an illness. Not that the Manafol says maybe he was overheating. He needed to get some air. You can't right away say the guy has no reason if he only did one. Or halon bebeis hakvaros, if a guy is sleeping in the cemetery, maybe he's maktir l'shedim. Maybe this is a guy who's offering sacrifices to the demons, which is what they know. This is prohibited. We know that, but that's not insane. That's a sinner. That's someone who's trying to get connected to the dark arts, but that's not insane. Or like we mentioned, and even the Gemara doesn't mention it, that when you sleep in the cemetery, sometimes you can connect to the souls of the deceased. And you can find that information. That was the whole story we had in Brachas. The guy found out he had a fight with his wife, so he went to sleep in the cemetery. He had no place where to go. He was ashamed to sleep in the shul because people will find out that he's fighting with his wife, even though everyone is fighting. He thought that he'll be like unique. Anyway, he slept in the cemetery and he hears two spirits speaking to each other, and they're speaking about the future, about when it will rain, when it won't rain. It's like the future stocks. And he made a killing. And he made money. And next year he fought with his wife for his wife to kick him out, to go back to the cemetery. Again, it was Rosh Hashanah, to hear the future. And one tells the other, no, someone is listening in. Now, coming back over here. So if a guy sleeps in the cemetery, I always wondered when I go to the Rebbe now, before Mashiach over there in the Queens, why did people buy houses with the backyard by the cemetery? What type of people are that? Maybe they just want quiet. I don't know. Like okay. Now, or hamukeres, if a person is ripping their garments, so koilikois, he's saying, means he's absent-minded. And that's what someone said about the Yakir. You mentioned about you losing stuff. You know, when a guy's ripping his garment, if he did it purposefully, stam, a destructive person, that's halachically in the category of a shoita. But if a person in his absent-mindedness is playing with his garments, he wasn't doing it bekavana, that in itself doesn't make him into a shoita. Makes him absent-minded. Big difference. And the fourth, and a person who loses his stuff, again, even though the Gemara uses another word, kudiyakos also means someone who's absent-minded. That's what the Marafulda says. Bottom line is that only if a person is engaging in three different, let's say, regularly irrational behaviors. You ever heard of the term chazaka? Let him be. Let him just let it go. That's called chazaka. Okay, weiter. Says the Gemara, guys, just to know, it's amazing that we have a deranged person outside the shul knocking on the gate. It's unbelievable. That Hashem is saying he's with us. Rabbi Yochanan says, I disagree with your statement, Rav Huna, that it's only if the person has all. No, even if he has only one of them, he's considered a shoita. And right away, the Gemara qualifies what Rabbi Yochanan says. The Gemara says like this, hold on, because really the Braisa gave 4, but it's really 3 and 1. Okay, just again, going out at night, sleeping in the cemetery, ripping your garment, 3. And then the final one is he loses whatever is given to him. You can argue ripping the garment is called destroying, not losing, destroying. Like, why did we even have to mention it? Now you'll get it.
What's the bad about sleeping in the gate? Is it also a dangerous place, like going out at night?
It's a sign of instability. Sane people don't do it. Sleeping in a cemetery.
Okay, but is it like anything?
The rationale would be that during the Second World War, you were hiding from the Nazis, you slept in the cemetery. You're not to be found. That's rational. But why would a person sleep in the cemetery? Go sleep in a park.
Right, so nothing inherently bad about it.
Nothing bad. It's irrational. So when a person is doing a lot of irrational things, at some point he's categorized as a shaitan. Okay. Omar Rabbi Bun says Rabbi Bun, he limits Rabbi Yochanan's statement that Mistabra Mada Omar Rabbi Yochanan Afilu Achas Mehen. When Rabbi Yochanan says even one, he didn't mean any one of the four. No, he only meant the last one. Ubulvad b'ma'abed mashna noisnam loy. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that if everything you give to a person he destroys, that in itself is a sign of a shaitan. The fourth stands by itself. Because afilu shaita shebeshaitim, even a shaita amongst the shaitim. In other words, someone who amongst the shaitim, they're all normal, they're all the same. Someone that they will call a shaita, ein ma'amet kol mashanoisim loy. But when it comes to the first three, like to your point of it, sleeping in the cemetery, okay, so like big deal. That in itself, it's irrational. But if a guy goes out at night, for no reason that we know, and he sleeps in the cemetery, and he rips his garments, something is off. Something is off with that person. In other words, or three, or only the fourth. And Rav Huna holds that even the fourth in itself is not enough to classify the guy, the him or the her, as a shait. Now that we spoke about this, the Gemara is going to introduce us back, like we mentioned, in Masechtas Gittin, in the beginning of the 7th chapter. We speak about someone who is seized with an illness that is called in the times of Chazal Kurdi Yakois. Why are we bringing Kurdi Yakois? You'll see it because Kurdi Yakois is a certain type of mental instability that's not constant. It's not a person who's consistently a shaita. Ultimately, we're speaking about someone, just like emotionally, you have people that are bipolar. We're speaking about people that sometimes are acting rationally, and sometimes they're acting irrationally. Not happy, sad, normal, crazy. That's a consequence of the illness called cardiakos. So the Gemara says cardiakos, that even though a person who sees with cardiakos, ein boy achas mikol elu, he will not engage in any of the four behaviors. He will not do that. Wow, the cardiakos, the guy was banging the most. If you could just send a text for people that come to shul armed, I really think that whoever comes, just send a text. And when they come to shul, they should go to airdrum to the side gate and have a conversation with someone over there. All right. Now, he doesn't sleep in the cemetery, but also a cardiakos during the time of insanity, the cardiakos cannot separate truma. Frek Gemara, my cardiakos, Amar Rabbi Yosi. Listen to these words. Hamim. Hamim comes from the word mehumam, someone who's confused. Someone who's confused. Now, that's the Mara Fulda says, 17 lines from the top. Hamim, he says, no, Hamim is kach shem hakardiyakos ha'oichzoi la'adam. That the name in the Yerushalmi is called someone who is seized, they called him a Hamim. That's, in other words, someone who's confused. How do you get cardiakos? Now, this is going back to what we have in Gittin. In Gittin, Bavli Samach Zayin. If you had wine that didn't properly ferment. So when you drink fermented wine, what happens to you is you become a shikr. That's what we know. If you drink wine that wasn't properly fermented, then you get another type of craziness called hamim. Now, there are many, many other statements, so let's go weiter. Actually, someone came in front of Rabbi Yosi. There was a certain weaver that was seized with cardiakos. The havon, now there's so many different ways of reading this. Let's go with one, then we'll go to the other. The havon yahavon leisimuk goy akum, that a weaver. Either when they gave him red threads to weave, they threw in a black thread. Red and black, if you're not colorblind, very different. right? Not blue and green, right? Not chelis and karte. And when you're weaving a red garment, you don't want to have a black thread. This is just a symptom of people that are seized with cardiacos. They don't care about it. They don't pay attention to that. And also, v'huloi, and he still wove. That was just a sign that this guy was seized with a little bit of an insanity. And not only in that direction. Akum, goy simuk, black and red and black, and he's weaving. In other words, that's the way Rabbi Yossi knew that right now this person is insane with cardiacos. Now, there are many other understandings of it. It's one of them is hard for me to understand, but he writes over here that he writes completely different. There's one of the Pnei Moshe. He says the red and the black is the Gemara in Gittin says the way you heal a person from cardiacos is giving them a certain type of very red meat and a certain type of black wine. Here now we have the winemaker, not black, but like a darker wine. That type of wine heals him. And when even though Rabbi Yossi gave him the Talmudic medicine for him to be healed of this insanity, it didn't work. Be that as it may. Bottom line,
Rabbi, in Gittin over there, if I'm not mistaken, Rashi says that it's a shed that comes and goes.
That's what I just said. The reason why we're bringing the cardiacos is because he's one who represents someone who's temporarily insane. Insane, stable, insane, and staying stable. It could be black and red, could be. So Omar, so Rabbi Yossi says, dui cardiacos she'asru she'amru chachamim. That what, in our context, that even though the cardiacos doesn't go out alone at night, he doesn't sleep in the cemetery, he doesn't reap his garments, he doesn't destroy what's given to him. It's another type of insanity. And more than that, this is a person that at times is sane. Nevertheless, during the time that that person is insane, let's go with one understanding that if he's a weaver and you give him something to weave, he doesn't care to make a discernment that everyone can make. If your job is to weave a black garment, not where red is beautiful, where red doesn't belong there, and you don't care, that's just a siman. During that time, you cannot separate Truma. And now, Yakir, that's the hemshach of the Gemara. In other words, pa'amim shoita, upa'amim chalum. If a person is at times a shoita, deranged, and at times chalum means he's healed, back and forth. So what's the law? B'shashu shoita, during the time of his insanity, then he's a shoita l'chol devarav. Givaldik. Now, just to know, what's shoita l'chol devarav? I know that we are talking about truma. It's not just about truma. B'chlal shoita is exempt from all of the mitzvahs. Go more than that. A shoita is someone who cannot affect a kinyan. That's a big thing. Aside of mitzvahs, he's exempt from mitzvahs. But let's speak, he makes a transaction. He buys something, he sells something. It's not halachically binding at all. That's the meaning. That during the time, you would argue if someone goes back and forth, then you can say even when he's insane, he's not that insane. Or on the other side, when he's sane, he's not that sane. No, we don't do it that way. When he's insane, he's a shaita. When he's sane, also, the Shmuel. Such a case came in front of Shmuel that what? Someone who suffers from kurdiakos yakir, which means that's the category. Pa'amim shoite, pa'amim chalum. And they were going to get divorced. And a person who's a shoite cannot divorce his wife. What do? Omar Shmuel says, kad du chalum. Wait for him to enter his period of sanity. Wait for him to be chalum. And then he can give a get, which is gavaldik. Now, I want to say like this. Now, like we spoke this out on the intro, guys, Halkop. This is one of the big topics of today. What is understood from Shmuel's psak, it sounds simple. Yeah, wait for him to be sane and then give it. What was understood is something much deeper than what it sounds like. Most people don't give a get themselves. First of all, I take that back. Most people don't write a get, but they give it. There are many times there is an option for a man not even to give a get to his wife. For whatever reason, he can send it to her through a shliach. What was understood from Shmuel's statement, guys, listen, is that if you have this guy, sometimes sane, sometimes insane, When he was sane, he instructed for people to write the get and for a shliach to give the get. The shliach is always sane. Shmuel is saying, that's what was understood, that when this guy, when the husband enters his period of insanity, the shliach cannot give it. For the shliach to give it, even though the shliach himself is sane, he was instructed when the mishaleach was sane. Doesn't matter. When the shliach gives it, the husband has to be sane. That is what was understood from Shmuel, that the shliach can only give the get to the wife. It's not enough for the shliach to be sane. It's not enough for the shliach to have been appointed when the husband was sane. No, we need for the husband to be sane during the time that the shliach gives the get. Now, not why. When we learned the sugi in the Bavli, it appears from the Bavli that this is a machloikis between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. And Rabbi Yochanan actually is of the opinion, the way it's understood in the Bavli, that we don't need for the husband to be sane when the shliach gives it. We need for the husband to be sane when the husband appoints the shliach. We need for the shliach to be sane. Reish Lakish is the one that says, no, we need for the husband to be sane when the shliach gives it. Now, Gabriel is asking why, so it's the Rebbe made it famous. And in yeshiva, it's relatively famous. Different ways, 3 ways of understanding shlichus. How independent or how dependent is the shliach? The more independent the shliach is, then the less I care if the mishaleach is sane or insane. But the more we view the shliach only as the hand of the mishaleach, so if my hand is sane, but my brain is insane, no, it doesn't help for my hand to be sane. It's a machlokes about how you understand shlichus. But without getting into the lamdis, guys, remember this big rule, that whenever we have a machlokes, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, who do we paskin like? Aside of 3 cases, bar mishalosh, aside of 3 famous cases, we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. And therefore, it's problematic to have understood the machlokes the way we mentioned it, because then it's going to come out that Shmuel is paskening like Reish Lakish, when l'chu'ura Shmuel should never paskin like Reish Lakish. Okay, there's a machlokes regarding chalitza of a pregnant woman. There's a case of a Yerusha. There's a case of a gift, mahayoim ula achar misa. These are the 3 cases, the long cases. Without,
What if the... Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into the 3 cases. This is not one of the 3 cases. Yeah, Kevin.
No, what if he doesn't want to give her a divorce when he's sane, but she wants a divorce?
Then it's a problem. When it comes to giving a divorce, when he's insane, he doesn't count. When he's sane, which is when it counts, a get has to be given with his consent, biblically, and rabbinically, also with her consent. You got a problem.
They just beat him when he's sane?
Kevin, his wife, deals with these things very well without beating. That's the problem of Agonis. Let's go now. Now, Shmuel ben Lakish. You're telling me the way we implied, because if that's the case, that's mamish der machlokes. That Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is the one that says that the shliach can only execute the shlichus when the mishaleach is healed from Rosh Hashanah. And we don't want for him to say like Reish Lakish. We would prefer for him to paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. Daladam and Beis says the Gemara in the Yerushalmi, you misunderstood their machlokes. Actually, Shmuel is paskening b'diyuk like Rabbi Yochanan. Read it inside. Different girsois. Ruba de Shmuel min the Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Ruba means more. No, Shmuel is more than Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. He's not agreeing with Reish Lakish. The more is like Rabbi Yochanan, which is the who Shmuel is saying that kad du chalim, that when the husband is stable, he's allowed to give a get. A whole different understanding. What's the whole different understanding? That the Reish Lakish actually is saying, according to the Yerushalmi, everyone agrees that you can only give the get when the husband is sane. Everyone agrees with that. The question is, how sane do you have to be? And Reish Lakish says that if someone has this kurdiyakos, they go sane and insane, since when they are sane, they're going to become insane. We know that. They're not even considered sane. Fakert Rabbi Yochanan was the one that's lenient, and so Paskin Shmuel, that even though this is a person that's not mamish sane, nevertheless, during the period of sanity, he's okay enough. And
remember that Reish Lakish is arguing with the thing about like when he's saying.
Very good. The Shlakish is saying that when a person goes in and out of sanity, the Shlakish does not consider that person to be sane. Whole different understanding. And now that's it. Now, where do we find in scripture that there are different levels of sanity? From a pasuk in Yeshayahu, where the pasuk says, Vatachli meni, this is us asking of God, may you, cholum means healing, v'hachayeni. I know that literally healing and life are two different things, but the context is that the fact that there are two steps, heal me and give me life, implies that there can be a type of healing that I'm not fully healed. Even after I have the vatachli meini, I still have to daven, give me life, which is exactly, who's that? The person who is predictable already. Sane, insane, sane, insane.
Sick and then getting better.
Life means completely better. It's like a caveman, the bipolar. The bipolar, we all know, even when they're up, that's a bad example because when they're up, they're too up, and when they're down, they're too down. I think the whole thing is insane. But even if they're in the middle, so that's the issue. So Rabbi Yochanan says, then you're good. Okay. Next, let's move on weiter. Anyways, the challenge is, again, what do we do now? No, with the get. That's the tragedy. Rav Shlakish was very machmir. Rav Shlakish is saying that until the husband fully recovers, if he'll ever fully recover, he's not qualified to divorce his wife. That's a problem. That's right. The story that I shared yesterday from the Tzemach Tzedek is not related to this because that guy was always the same. He wasn't, the story is not of a person that goes in and out of sanity and sanity. He was different. But the Tzemach Tzedek felt that different is not a siman of a shaita. It's a siman of sugar, not of shaita. Let me give another word. Okay. Now, let's move on. So we had the chedesh, the shaita. Again, we're going through the 5 categories. The third of the 5 is the cotton. Now, says the Gemara, man tani cotton. Who is the author of the Tanakama that says that a minor, even post facto, who separated truma is not a truma, it's not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tane, and we're going to prove it to you from a Braisa. Before we read the Braisa, people say, what are you talking about? When I was learning the Gemara yesterday, the Gemara has to quote a Braisa. The Mishnah said, guys, open up the Mishnah. You'll see the Mishnah, not right now, later in the Sefer of the Mishnah says, I'm quoting the words, Katan shaloi hevi shtei sa'aros, Rabbi Yehuda oimer truma say truma. A minor who didn't even, not only is he a minor in years, but he didn't even physically mature, post facto is truma is a truma. And Rabbi Yossi then later says that is truma is not a truma. I want you to know that if not for the Braisa, one might have understood Rabbi Yehuda's statement about a minor that did not yet physically mature as someone who's 12. And as when we learned the Mishnah, we mentioned that just like by Nidarim, there's a concept called Mufla Hasamach Le'ish, which means that a boy by 12, a girl by 11, are people that if they understand the meaning of a vow, their vow is binding. Truma is in the general category of things that verbally you affect a change in status. You're separating truma, it's like vow. This is very important. So we might have misunderstood Rabbi Yehuda. If not for the Braisa, one might have understood that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi are not arguing, that Rabbi Yossi is clarifying Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda, who says that post facto is the truma is only if he's 12, even though he didn't physically mature. That would have been a misunderstanding. In the Braisa, coming back over here, clearly we see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that a minor that's not even 12, post facto, now can be a 2-year-old. It has to be a minor that understands the meaning of truma. It's not that difficult. That his truma is a truma. That the Tani, we learned in the Braisa, cotton sheinichoy aviv ba miksha. Let's go with the taich that miksha means a gourd field. So there was a father that had a field of gourds. Now, by the way, I just want you to know, and we touched upon this, we'll go into it in greater, just a three-way machlekes rishonim. What is it that needs to be tithed biblically? According to all opinions, vegetables only have to be tithed rabbinically. So be it. But that was the case. A guy, the father owned a gourd field. He left his son there in the morning. The son decided to do his father a favor, and he began to separate truma. Now, when his father came back and he saw what his son did, v'aviv mikayim al yadav, he agreed. Truma's a truma. Now, I want to say two things over here. Guys, remember, when we learned the Mishnah Daf Aleph, we correctly quoted the Bavli that holds that the only person that can separate truma is the principal, the owner. Eloma, if the principal appoints a shliach, someone who's halachically able to be a shliach, the shliach does it on behalf of the owner. L'choura, the Yerushalmi doesn't need shlichus for one to be able to separate truma. The reason why I cannot separate truma for you, unless you told me to do so, unless you consented, is because if I did that, I'm called a gazlan, like we spoke out in the intro. Why am I a gazlan? Because even though tevel is asur, but tevel is yours. When I go into yours without your consent and I separate the 2%, the truma belongs to the kohen. It's not yours at all. Even though you get to choose to whom to give it to, but that's not yours. If you don't consent to that, I'm a gazlan. So what's needed, the reason why I cannot do it for you, even though normally Zajac Adam Shalei b'fanav, is because it's not a full schus. But if you consent, it's enough. I just want to add that this is very important for today, for tomorrow. You don't need shlichus in the Yerushalmi. And that's why, coming back to this Baraisa, so even though, now, two things. So first of all, I cannot do it if you did not consent. Number two, even if you consented, I have to be qualified to do it. The fact that Rabbi Yehuda says post facto what the child did is valid is, number one, the consent I get. We see the father agreed. But if a minor is excluded from the peoples that can separate truma, even if the father would have consented, it wouldn't have worked. Like, for example, what's the fifth case in the Mishnah? A goy. Even if I ask a goy explicitly, please separate truma from me, it's not going to be valid. So from here you see not only the nuanced chiddush that even though when the minor did it, I don't know if the father consented or not. But later when he's megaladas, when he revealed he's okay, then the truma is a truma. But it also shows you that post facto, a minor can separate truma. Okay, that's why we brought the brais. That's the big chiddush here. This, let's go with that. Let's go with that. You need consent for it not to be a gzeil. Now, says the Braisa, the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Yehuda to a degree. Loi hu shetoidem. This is not accurate if the minor was the one that separated Truma, because the Tanakama holds like our Mishnah, the Tanakama, that a minor cannot separate Truma. So I get the consent resolves Gezela. In the Bavli, the consent would somehow be a retroactive shlichus. I'm not going to get into that. But he's a minor. When will it be valid? Says the Chachamim, Elo aviv hu she'imein al yodoi. Let me tell you what this means literally, and let me tell you the way the Yerushalmi understands it. Literally, it means that when could a minor separate truma? If the father was imein yodoi. Who knows what that means? He guided the hands of the minor. The literal meaning would mean that if the father, in educating his child, takes the child's hand and he guides his hands, then it's a truma. Because we don't view it to be an act of the minor, we view it to be an act of an adult. If this would have been the statement of the Tanakama, then we would have ended here the whole sugya. The Yerushalmi, now you have to understand, how do you know what it means? Because they had a tradition. That's what the Tan of the Braisa meant. That imein es yodai, this is very important, doesn't only mean what I said. Imein es yodai means that the son was in the field. That was the case. The son was there by himself. He separated gourds. The father comes back and he sees what his son did. He adds a few gourds into the pile of truma. By adding a few gourds, he did an action that shows not only is he okay, he's making the pile bigger. So even though, now this is a big chiddush, even though the Chachamim hold a minor cannot separate, the fact that the father added to the pile retroactively as if the father did the whole thing. Look inside the Maraf Fulda, 3 lines. I'm sorry.
Rabbi, what's the difference between the two? It sounds the same. Iman Yado and give me a living example. It sounds the same.
One is the father just consented. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says, "My son, Yasaleh, I'm happy what you did." That's called the Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim hold that it's not enough for the father to say, "I'm happy with what you did." We need for the father to actually add to the pile. Because now you have a maisa of truma from someone who's qualified. The chiddush is that since you have some truma from an adult, we add whatever was done until there as if the father did it.
No, but can you
Now
also
once
not
the
say?
one, huh?
Can you also not say if he didn't add, that means he is happy with what he did? He's so happy he's not going to
Chachamim hold
add.
that happiness is not enough because the Chachamim hold that a minor cannot separate truma.
Okay.
But now that he's imein es yadai, not only did he do it the way I said it, he added, he did an action. Now I want to ask a question. When the father did that, there are 2 ways of understanding it, and we're going to leave this question open. We'll see how far we can get. Guys, halka. This is a big thing. Do we say that when the father was imein yadai, when he added, do we say that retroactively allows for whatever the minor separated for that to become truma? Or no, the minor cannot separate truma. When the father added to the pile, what that does is it makes that going now forward, not only the gourd that the father separated, but all of what the son did is also going to be considered truma. Like Bishul Akum, very good. The Jew did something, the whole thing got transformed. Now, I want to just say, like, there's a few dinim for the Gabbai who's not here, who loves these topics. A person who's at full yom, if a person became Tomei, and they went to the mikveh, but it's not yet night, that person has no ability to be metamei chulin. But that person who has contact with truma will be metamei truma. So here's the real question. The son separated, whatever, he separated 10 gourds. In the morning, the father comes later in the afternoon. Prior to the coming of the father, a tful yom touched those 10 gourds. Now the father went ahead and he added another gourd. And the Chachamim have a chiddush. Even though a minor cannot separate truma, this is big. Since the father added, we view it as if what? Either we view it that what the child did, lemafreya, is already truma, and then it's tamei because the tful yom touched it, or no, since the minor is just a minor, I get the chiddush that if the father added 1 gourd, it's not 1 gourd that's truma. All of the 11 are truma, but it's only truma from when the father added, and therefore, before the father added, it's chulin. That which the tful yom touched had no effect. Beautiful question. So asks the Gemara that now that we explained the Chacham the way we explained it, 2 options. Do we say lemafreya nases truma, which is the biggest chiddush? Even though the Chachamim hold the minor cannot separate truma, but the father is adding to the pile retroactively, somehow elevates that separation into an adult's separation because we view it as if the father separated all of the 11. Not now. Then, only mikanu lahaba. So that's the Gemara's question. And I know we have another minute, so I love living it in the middle, a cliffhanger, but let's go even more cliffhanger. So Amar Rav Shemi, I'll tell you the answer from the following Brais. Now, what is the Brais talking about? Here again, Chevra, this is very important. According to the Yerushalmi, the reason why someone cannot separate truma on behalf of someone else is not because you need shlichus, not because of it. It's because without the owner's consent, I'm considered the gazlan. So now we're speaking about an adult. We're gonna have to go on this tomorrow but let's quickly go like this. I went into your field without any instruction. I separated truma. Now you come back and you say explicitly, I'm happy you did it. It's going to be good. Because now that I know you're happy, I'm not a goslin. What happens if you make a statement that's vague? What statement is vague? We had this in the Bavli, guys. Right above him, the owner comes back and he says, why didn't you separate Truma from something even better? Now, what's vague? We can either understand that that person is being cynical, like, what, you're doing things for me? Why didn't you give the... Imagine I go into your house and I take your things and I give tzedakah with it. So you say, well, if you're giving tzedakah from why didn't you give him already my diamonds? Either you're being cynical or you're saying I'm happy, and halavai, you would have done a bigger mitzvah. So how do you know what you mean? So the Tanoim say like this: if this person had better product, then we don't understand him to have made a cynical statement. We actually take his words literally. But if we know that the guy who separated Truma separated it already from the best of quality, so when he made a statement, why didn't you take it even from the better? We know that he's being cynical. Then the Truma is not a Truma. Let me just go. A guy comes into his field and he finds someone who he did not instruct to separate doing it. Amar Loin, he tells him, really, you should have separated Truma from the better ones. So the Braisa says that if he has Yafim, but if there's no better, that gives us the insight that statement was a cynical statement. Now, what does this have to do with that? I'm not going to tell you. We're going to stop in the middle and we're going to continue.